In this tutorial, we'll take a look at the fundamentals of Infigo's access permission functionality. So this allows a storefront administrator to create rules controlling customer access to products. The first thing we're going to do is navigate to access permission settings. So these are just some general settings for configuring our access permissions. We'll just quickly go through these. So first off, we have access permissions enabled. So this controls the overall access capabilities within the selected storefront. So if I have that turned on, it means access permissions are enabled. This is a great setting to use if you temporarily need to disable your access permissions rules that you may have specified. If you're doing some maintenance, for example, or want to test something else. We have default is allowed. So products, categories, or otherwise sitting outside of the defined rules are allowed to be viewed by all customers in a default configuration. So default is allowed. If that's turned on, that means that by default, all customers are allowed to see all products unless a rule specifies that they're not allowed to do so. If that's turned off, then it means by default, all customers are not permitted to access our products. And then they're only able to access products which are specifically mentioned in certain access permission rules. We have deny guest accounts. So that's a global restriction on guest account use. So recommended in most cases if you want to use access permissions. Then we have include children in category access. So this controls whether a category named in a permission rule is treated in isolation or the rule filters down to children of that particular category. And then we have the access permission version. You can see we have this selection between V1 and V2. V2 is recommended and encouraged for all new Infigo users and those just introducing access permissions onto their storefronts. So V1 is still there as we still have users that are using the old legacy version, but V2 is a much improved methodology. So it's recommended that's utilized for anyone else just becoming familiar with this functionality. With those configured, we'll click Save. Now we can get onto the next group of settings by clicking on this little button down here. Alternatively, if we start typing access permissions again, and this time we'll go to Set up access permissions. Now this screen is where you can define or edit access permissions within your particular storefront. We'll break it down into three major groups within here. So we'll go into these in more detail, but in a nutshell, we have scopes. So this is a method of defining the users that you wish to apply your permissions to. We have targets. So this is a method of defining the products or categories that you wish to apply permissions to. And then we have access permissions and the rules tab. So this is an area to combine scopes and targets to give certain users, so covered by the scopes, access or restrict access to certain products or categories controlled by the targets. Now, of course, there are other tabs available on here as well. So rule groups, stock management, automatic rule generation. These will not be covered in this fundamentals video. So we're going to start off with scopes. Click on Add New Scope. And you'll see we get this new screen appearing here. So scopes, as I mentioned before, define the users that you wish to apply access permissions rules to. There are numerous ways to define scopes. Some examples of this including all customers. So this is a blanket scope covering all customers specified on the storefront. As you'll see when I checked that, the other specification methods will become unavailable when this is selected. So this is just covering every single user on that particular storefront. If we want to be a little bit more selective, then for example, we have the customer field. This allows us to select an individual customer account to apply as a scope. So you see, for example, I can select individual users. We have departments. So departments are groups of customers. So it might be such as a particular company or an area within a company. So specifying a department on a scope will mean that any rules apply to all of the customers within that particular department. We have customer role, and then we have various country entries. So scopes can be created to apply to particular countries. So this is useful if, for example, certain products are only available in certain regions. Now, in our example, our scope will be kept nice and simple, and it's going to cover one specific customer account. I can give the scope a manual name if I want to do so. I can leave that blank to get it to auto-generate, and then click Save. And you can see our scope for that particular customer has now been created. I'm very quickly going to create a second scope for user 2. Make sure we click on Save to confirm those settings. And then we're going to move ahead to our targets. So targets are a mean of specifying the products or the categories that you wish to be included as part of your access permissions rules. As with scopes, there are numerous methods of defining the entities that are covered by a target, such as individual products or entire categories. Also included in the target specification is an all setting, which allows rules to be applied to all of the products on the storefront at once. So if I just go on Add New Target, you can see there we start off with that all configuration, where all products will be selected for that particular target. Alternatively, we can do individual products, product groups, categories, product tags, specification attributes, and so on. We'll just keep it nice and simple in this particular example. So I'm going to go for a specific product, and I'm going to relate it to, in this case, product 1. And I'll very quickly create a second one for product 2. Now, the final step here is to go to the Access Permissions tab and then the sub-tab, which is Rules. So what we're going to do in here is actually generate our Access Permissions rules. And to do this, we're going to combine the scopes and the targets that we've previously created. So if I go to Add New Record, you'll see that we've got a few different columns in this entry that appears. One is allowing us to select the scope from our list of generated scopes. We can select our target. We can apply a weight. So the higher the better here. What this basically means is that if there's two conflicting rules, so let's say, for example, one is denying access to a product and one is allowing access to a product, it will default to the one which has the higher weighting and is considered more important. And then we have the Has Access checkbox. So a checked box here will grant access to the target for the particular scope. An unchecked box will deny access to the target for the chosen scope. So in my case, I'm going to grant access and insert, and that's our rule created. And then I'm going to create a second rule which covers user 2 and gives that user access to product 2. So we'll take a look at this on the front end in a moment, but what we should generally see here is that when we impersonate user 1, they only have access to product 1. And when we impersonate user 2, they only have access to product 2. So let's go ahead and take a look at this on the front end. We can see that user 1 only has access to product 1. Product 2 is nowhere to be seen in our featured products here. However, if I go ahead and impersonate user 2, we should see that the opposite happens. So they only have access to product 2 and not product 1. Now, this is a very, very basic example. You can create very complex structures of rules to grant and deny access to different users, to different categories, different products, different groups, whatever you need to do. But this fundamental description here should give you a solid foundation for building those more complex rules.